It's time for another video. Sorry for the delay, I haven't been feeling too well, but I have gotten back on. Welcome, this time we're going to take a look at Carmageddon Reincarnation. Something I have been kind of holding off on because of the issues it's had, but luckily a lot of those have been solved, and we'll get into that once we actually get into the game. What is Carmageddon? Well, Carmageddon is an old school vehicular combat game. Think, you know, things like, gosh, what were some of the really old ones? Interstate 76, Vigilante 8, Twisted Metal, things like that. Only this is a little different because it doesn't revolve around cars with weapons. It's the car is the weapon, and it's mostly about wrecking your opponents and killing lots of innocent pedestrians. Best not to think about that part. And it was actually, the original Carmageddon was one of the earlier kind of controversial games when it comes to, you know, the history of, like, violent video games and, oh god, think of the children, like, soccer mom parenting. It wasn't the very first one, but it was an early example. It's not quite as early as things like Mortal Kombat, which, for those who don't know, is actually the reason the ESRB exists. But it was one of those games. And, fairly recently, they have been trying to bring it back, and they have done so with Carmageddon Reincarnation. And it was in early access for a while, but it's now out, and it had some serious issues going into early access. It was very poorly optimized. It performed terribly. Even people with, like, monstrously beastly PCs couldn't get it to perform above 60 FPS all the time. And if there were lots of pedestrians on screen or lots of car sort of physics going on with like crashes and things like that, it just dropped horribly. I am happy to report that a lot of that has been fixed, and the game now performs much better. In fact, the last 3 updates or so have added several new cars and some, I think even a new track, and a lot of kind of balancing stuff, but mostly they have been focused on optimization fixes, and it has made a huge difference. Rest assured that this game still needs a fairly potent PC to run at the highest settings, but it is now no longer so difficult to run at high settings that it doesn't make any sense. So I'm going to show you the game pretty much at full spec, except for I've turned a couple of things down, like I normally do for most videos, like motion blur, because that makes YouTube videos look really awful, and depth of field for a similar reason, as well as the shadows have been turned down slightly. And the AA as well. But most of it is still max spec, and it looks fairly good. But mostly it's like the destruction physics and things that are impressive, so let's just jump in and stop talking. As you'll notice, there are a very large number of vehicles. You start, of course, with the classic Eagle R here. And you also have the Hawk, which you can use if you want to, when you start off. And there are lots and lots of vehicles that you can unlock. Every now and then, you'll find a vehicle in one of the missions that if you crash them, you steal their car. And that's the only way to unlock more vehicles for you to drive. And each one has their own spec, their own customization options, and their own feel. Every car actually handles quite a bit differently. Some cars are actually pretty hard to handle. Like this one I find, I don't know if it's just like the torque of the acceleration, but it's very slidey. You know, some of them are a little difficult to handle. But for the most part, I actually really like this one. A lot of the handling is pretty interesting, I'd have to say. Some cars are very odd in the way that they feel, and I actually kind of like that. I like that almost every car feels like vastly different to the others, which means that you can have a lot of fun. I really like this hearse. It's a fun one to drive. I have it upgraded, but you may notice that there are all these weird symbols around here, so let's kind of talk about those. There is an upgrade system in the game. Unfortunately, the upgrade system isn't particularly complex or interesting, but it does its job. So right now I am driving the Shred Light because it is a lot of fun, and I have it maxed out pretty much. And you have these upgrades, and they're just like basically linear upgrades. Each one is better than the last. But as you can see, you have a 12-part limit, which means that you actually can't equip every single one of these at the best ranking. Each of these is like 1 point, if you will, so this would be 5. Which means if you try to equip all of them, that would be 15, which is obviously more than 12 if you've been keeping up in math class, and you can't do that. So you gotta kind of work on, I guess, a build, technically, for each car, so this car is pretty fast. So I am okay with kind of slacking on the power upgrades because it's already really fast, but it's fairly light, so armor helps, and of course, the offensive upgrades combined with the already nice speed of the car makes it pretty, effective. So this is the sort of build that I've gone for with this vehicle. And you also have various skins you can unlock, multiple colors for every car, as well as one special one at the bottom that tends to look a lot different. And some of these are very cool looking. The one for the hearse looks awesome. And there are various challenges that are basically like achievements that you can do, and unlocking each of these special paint jobs requires a different challenge depending on which car you're talking about, and the same goes with rims. And I have these rims. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. These are, like, Greek? Anyway, let's see. So, this is the car that I'm currently using, and you're, of course, free to switch as often as you want to. And there are various chapters that you can go through, each with 3 missions, and there are many, many mission types. But the first of all of them is always classic karma, which is you beat the mission by either completing a checkpoint race, wrecking all of your opponents, which is the way you usually do it because it's the most fun, or killing all of the pedestrians, which is really difficult because some of them are hidden very well. And there are many, many maps, different courses that you'll go on, and some of these courses are, like, the same. Like, for instance, the Berg Belt is in this cold stores thing, I believe. But they're all actually quite large, the actual karma type levels, and each of these smaller challenges are sort of bits of those levels taken out, and they're so big that you'll actually not really feel like you're repeating the same thing very often, so let's just go into it. Ooh, and I can finally steal the Terrible Twin if I crash them. I've been wanting that thing because it looks like a lot of fun. And Heinz Faust, of course, and that's what I'm going up against. So, here we go. And the gameplay is very heavily based on vehicular combat and power-ups. There are lots and lots and lots of power-ups to collect, and not all of them are actually good for you, and some of them are quite difficult to use, but they're all pretty much a lot of fun. So, as I mentioned, there are also, like, very large levels, so expect secrets and things hidden around. It actually reminds me a lot of Twisted Metal, and a bit of things like Vigilante 8 and Rogue Trip Vacation 2012, was it? That's an old game on PS1, I think, that, like, no one ever played. It was awesome, though. Had a similar sense of humor. And what you'll be seeing is a lot of kind of secrets and weirdness around the levels, and, like, special things you can do if you happen to get to, like, certain places and things like that. It's pretty interesting. Oh, good! I'm not off to a good start here. And as you can see, it is already classic Carmageddon with lots of horrendous destruction, and I am badly injured. The first thing you might notice is that the car damage modeling is really, really, really good. The cars deform in really detailed ways. Tires can come off. The actual wheel itself can come off. All of them can. Things like individual damage, as you can see up in the top right there, like the steering column, various bits of your car that actually will affect its handling and performance can be damaged. Which is always... oh god! Which is always cool, because it means that the actual destruction of the vehicles is as satisfying as ever, and I think that was one of the reasons it actually performed so poorly at first. Oh god, because the car damage modeling is actually so impressively detailed that it basically meant that in, like, huge clashes and things, there was a lot of calculation going on, and the game slowed to a crawl. And like I said, I'm happy to report that is not the case. In fact, since I started this particular mission, even in that big kind of dust-up skirmish at the beginning, the frame rate has been a solid 60 all the way through. And if you want my PC specs, they're on my About page, but it's not... It's a good PC. It's definitely a good PC. I'm not gonna say it isn't, but it's not, like, monstrously ridiculous. And previously, a couple of updates ago, even a PC like mine wouldn't have been able to actually keep 60 frames on this thing very well because it was so poorly optimized. And they have really picked up the slack on their part, and they have been really good at fixing the issues. I want to crash this guy so I can get his car. And they have really done good by the community when it comes to fixing all the bugs and just various bits of the game. That's not to say the game isn't buggy still. It's got some bugs. I feel like almost every game has bugs, but that's hardly the point. The point is, the big game-breaking stuff and weird physics stuff is mostly out the window now, and yeah, got it. Of course it's called Siamese Dream. Of course it is. And there's a very significant amount of difference between the current build of the game and what you have probably seen in videos or in reviews previously, over the last couple of months. And that's awesome. I was really happy to see that, because I was afraid that this game was going to be a bit of one of those lost causes in early access, where it either just never comes out of early access because there's so much wrong with it that they don't feel comfortable with releasing it, and it's kind of stuck in like this weird perpetual development limbo, or it does come out of early access because they feel that it's been in there for too long, and it comes out and people are disappointed that a lot of these big issues still aren't fixed. And there was a real opportunity for that to happen with this game, unfortunately, because of the way that it, the way that it was going at first. But they have done an excellent job with actually fixing it up and getting it up to snuff and adding more content at the same time as actually prioritizing fixes, which is, I've got to imagine, somewhat difficult to do sometimes. I can't imagine the Carmageddon development team is particularly sizable. And the idea of being able to fix major bugs and still keep up adding new content at a regular and acceptable pace is actually really impressive, and I'm genuinely impressed with how they've actually handled it, because that seems like a difficult task when you don't have a particularly large development team to actually, oh god, keep a hold of both of those things. So what's the gameplay like? Well, it's actually really dependent on the kind of car you're driving, because some of the handling is really wonky. I really like this car because it's great at some pretty cool drifts and things, but it's not really difficult to control. And in this case, of course, this is a classic Karma level, so as I mentioned, there are 3 different ways to actually end it, and the best way, of course, is to crash everyone else. But just for some points and adding time onto the timer, I'm going through some checkpoints and killing some pedestrians as well, because that's what you do in Carmageddon. The game, in case you haven't noticed or just didn't know yet, Carmageddon has a very crass, crude sense of humor. It's, I don't know what it is about, like pretty much all of the car combat games, the classic ones, have that same sense of humor. That's really pretty, like, vulgar and offensive. It doesn't bother me, but I understand that some people might not like that. Yes, you can run over fat people and it gives you bonuses for doing so. But it's, cunning stunt, yes. It pulls it off pretty well. And, I understand that some people have complained about it because, let's be honest, a lot of the people that are kind of looking at this game played the original when they were kids, and, you know, when that humor, that style of humor was actually pretty funny to them. Now they're older, and it might not be as entertaining to them, per se. But I think they've actually kind of done well to keep that style of humor in still, regardless of whether people really appreciate it as much anymore or not. It is kind of, I mean, this entire game is sort of a throwback to what Carmageddon always was, and I feel like it's kind of necessary for them to keep, for them to keep that humor and stuff in there still. Damn it. Yep, I'm gonna have to reset. There are ways to reset yourself, as you keep noticing me doing when I fail miserably. You can reset, and you can also repair yourself, like this. But doing so costs points, and that's tied into the progression of the actual campaign itself. As you kill pedestrians, discover secrets, go do cool stunts, wreck people, go through checkpoints, whatever it is you're doing, you get points. And every new chapter requires a certain number of points to be accrued between all 3 missions of that one chapter. So the next chapter is going to take me 200,000 points total to unlock, which means I'm going to have to play these 3 levels, the 3 new levels that this chapter introduced, until I accrue that many points. And usually, because as you're upgrading and getting better, the point totals... Oh no, don't kill the penguins! They're so cute! The point total will increase slowly, but usually you don't have to replay the levels if you actually beat them, because you'll get enough points even through multiple repairs and resets and stuff to actually unlock the next chapter without having to replay, like, repeatedly. But you can replay if you want to, and every new chapter will unlock things like new upgrade parts for your car, new event types, new tracks, and new opponent types with new cars and things. Oh god. Underwater handling, very strange. Ooh, an anvil launcher, nice. And in this case, I'm fairly far into the campaign, and there are lots of new opponents to keep me on my toes, and the opponents do get quite tricky sometimes. It depends, interestingly enough, on the event types you're actually doing and the levels you're in. I noticed the lowrider, Otis I think is his name, is really, really good at the missions where you have to specifically kill a specific number of your opponents. You have to crash their cars a certain number of times and you all respawn repeatedly. He's really good at that one for some reason. And especially in the smaller arenas, he like dominates in those, and you gotta be really careful. But the game does have variety going for it, for sure. There are a lot of vehicles for you to drive. There are a lot of power-ups for you to horribly kill people with. Oh god, no! There are a lot of tracks to kill people on, and the upgrade variety, although isn't particularly great because they're all just linear upgrades, they don't even have, unfortunately, they don't even have visual effects. Like, you notice pretty much every vehicle, of course, has like a weapon on it of some kind. Spikes, turbines, blades, something like that. Like this car has those crazy moving spines on the front and the wheel spikes. Got him. It would be kind of cool if those actually changed in appearance with every upgrade, but that might be a little too much work. I don't know for sure. There we go. We got him. I'm guessing that terrible twin car is very difficult to handle, but it's probably really good for the race events. So, let's see, what else does this game actually have going for it now that it's completely playable? The soundtrack is pretty good. There's a lot of silly music going on, even like Fear Factory and stuff like that. That's pretty classic to Carmageddon, though. You need some kind of like cheesy metal soundtrack, and it's got that. So there you can see me unlocking progress to the next chapter. And I'm already like over 3/4 of the way, well, almost 3/4 of the way, I mean, to the next chapter unlock. So as long as I beat these two, I'll definitely get there. So this is a race. And race events, unlike those classic Karma events, have to be beaten by going through the checkpoints and laps. But that doesn't mean that there aren't weapons and power-ups along the way, because there most definitely are. That's why it's called a death race, and not just a race. Let's see. 700 miles per hour. That sounds fast, and very difficult to control. I really need to try that at some point, but I'm kind of afraid to right now. Ooh. Ooh. There are some nice ones. Oh, that is awesome. That's pretty great. What kind of rims do they have? Aero and Mark II. They're airplane. That's a pretty cool vehicle. I like that. That's a cool car. I'm gonna have to try that out at some point. And of course, they are conjoined twins because, you know, that's just this game's sense of humor. 1369. Yes, we get it. But if you can deal with that kind of humor, I can. I don't mind. It's silly, yes, but it doesn't take itself seriously. This is kind of like Just Cause, in that what I mean is it's a game that's a game. It's not afraid to be a video game because it comes from an era where that's all video games were, and they didn't try to be anything more than that. And I think they've done a really good job of actually taking the Carmageddon formula forward into, like, for new audiences and into the current age, I guess you could say, because it's really been a while for the Carmageddon games. The first two, are they the only two? I don't remember, are actually available on Steam. And they're very, very old. One thing I will say is that the load times are a little long in this game. Although, as big as the levels are and as free and open as they are and load screenless once you get into them, I can kind of understand it, but I don't know, you might want a solid-state hard drive or something to help with the load times. I don't have one of those because I'm broke. Alright, so this is a death race, and this is one of my favorite maps. This particular course isn't something I've actually done on this map yet, but I've been on this actual level many times, because there's a lot of level reuse, but like I said, they're so huge that there can be so many courses along the same level, and you still won't see the same bits of it twice because they're so big. That I like. And like I said, they're really open with lots of secrets and stuff to find. So that helps, definitely. That helps with the feeling of kind of avoiding repetitiveness, if you will. A game like this could, of course, get repetitive, and that's an interesting problem, isn't it? I think I've found a lot recently that the kind of games that aren't afraid to just be like, hey, we're a video game, actually have a lot of kind of repetitiveness in their nature. I don't know what's up with that exactly. I've been trying to kind of pinpoint that lately, because a lot of classic franchises and stuff kind of brought up to date recently have had that issue. I don't know if it's just because back then game design was simpler, and it was, and a lot of us were kids at the time, like in the early to mid 90s, late 90s, when things like this were really, really popular. And, you know, games were simpler and smaller back then, so bringing them up to date means that maybe there's a bit of repetitiveness in their nature, but now that games can be larger, now that more variety can be put in, it's kind of up to the devs to both take the classic formula and keep it recognizable and fun to the people that liked the classic formula, while also giving it more than just being a nostalgia trip, if you understand what I mean. More than just, hey, look, it's Carmageddon, guys. Remember Carmageddon? Wasn't that fun? And that's nice and all, but in this case, they have done more than that, and I think I appreciate that. They've put more content in, and more mechanics, and a crap ton of power-ups, and fun secrets to find, and things like that, and they've made it more than just, don't you remember how fun Carmageddon was? Because, yeah, it was fun, but I think a lot of us maybe are looking for a little more than that these days, and that's okay. And, of all of the various driving/racing games on Steam right now, Carmageddon, I feel, sticks out because of its heritage, without being exclusively kind of bound to its heritage for being fun, if you get what I mean. Oh god, the hot rod power-up is... I don't like it. It makes me drive even worse than usual. Never put me in a car. Oh god. Alright, we got this. No, oh god, this thing's... okay. The hot rod power-up is really hard to drive in a straight line with for me. Ooh, free recovery vouchers, nice. Dusty Trails, Dusty Trails National Park. I'm actually not doing too badly this time. I am in first place. Some of these races can get really hard, but let's, some of the other event types for people, let's go into those. There's a event type that's basically a death match. You're expected to kill a specific number of enemy opponents of their cars, either up to a specific number or as many as you can within a specific time limit. I see people horribly dying up there, that's good. Oh god. I'm supposed to be up there, aren't I? Damn it. You can also, in almost every event, kill one of your opponents to get some of their score. So like in the race, for instance, if someone was to kill me, if someone was to crash me, they would actually get my lap. And it works the other way around as well. If you wreck an opponent, you will take one of their laps for your own. Which is actually a fairly good bit of balance between really, really fast and really slow and tough cars. You may not even complete maybe one of the 4 to 6 laps in a race on your own. And the rest of the time you're trying to prevent other people from winning by constantly crashing them and stealing their laps until you win. It's a viable strategy. And that's what kind of keys into the variety of the game, how a lot of it is very much based on play style of the car you chose, since they're each quite different, and the actual, even though, like I said, the upgrades are kind of boring, the builds that you can create are interesting, because of how different the cars are. The upgrades themselves, not that interesting, but in combination with how different the vehicles are, makes it more interesting than otherwise. Excuse me, would be. Hey, it fits Carmageddon, alright. Oh! And there's a significant amount of variance with how each one feels. The variance is very strong here, I guess. Okay. The vehicle physics are pretty great. Like I said, sometimes the handling can feel a bit wonky depending on what vehicle you're using, but at least they're all different, I guess. And some of them are also maybe fit for other types of courses, more specifically. Yep, don't get crashed. Don't get crashed. You've got a lap. Don't let them take it. And some of these events can actually take a fair amount of time. Some of them can be over very quickly, and some of them not so much. There's also, let's see, what other event types are there? The Fox and Hounds event type is kind of interesting. It's a King of the Hill-like event, where one person is the fox, their car glows, I think blue, and everyone else would be the hounds, and you have a time limit. And it starts, I think, at 2 minutes usually, and whenever you're the fox, your time counts down. But if one of the hounds taps you, or more likely rams into you at 1,000,000 miles an hour, they become the fox. So you're trying to go as fast as you can and keep the fox status, keep your time ticking down as long as you can. Very much, like I said, a King of the Hill style. And try and prevent the fox from being hit and getting it stolen from you. And the first to 0 seconds left on their timer wins. That's a pretty fun one, because a lot of the bits of the arenas they create are specifically for that game mode. I mentioned that there's arena reuse, but one thing to understand is that the arenas are generally unique to each event type. So this particular bit of this level, you'll see pieces of this level in various types of events, but this course is clearly meant for a race, and this exact same route won't be used for the other event types. Other bits of this level will be used for other event types, but it won't be exactly like this. A level like this wouldn't be as fitting for, say, of the Fox and Hounds event, because that needs a kind of open arena to be more enjoyable. Long straightaways and stuff are good, but this is very clearly for, like, a race, not for some kind of King of the Hill style avoidance challenge. And I appreciate that they've put a lot of genuine effort in actually trying to make each... What is he doing? Trying to make each one unique enough. Uh-oh. Okay, we're good. So, let's see. The power-up variety is great. Some of them are negative. You'll find things like jelly suspension, which makes your wheels go all wobbly and makes it really hard to move. That hot rod one, I think, can be good if you're on a straightaway or something. Otherwise, it's really hard to control. And you'll find some really cool stuff sometimes. Things like afterburners, bubble car, which turns your car, like it surrounds you with a bubble and you can float through the air, like someone blew your car out of a bubble machine. It's kind of awesome. You can like fly way across the maps with that thing really fast. Things like earthquake bombs, solid granite cars, which makes you like a machine of destruction when you hit things. The lesser spotted Acme damage multiplier, that is genuinely a power-up. That's not a joke. And all kinds of power-ups based on interacting with the pedestrians. Things like Ped Napalm, Ped Zappers, Peds on Diazepam, Speedy Peds, Slow Peds, Frozen Peds. All kinds of stuff like that. And that all really helps to make the game less repetitive and more interesting for a longer period of time. But let's get down to the kind of big bugbear besides the performance, which is now luckily mostly fixed. How much does the game cost? Well, I probably should have taken that shortcut many times. The game isn't too expensive, but it may be too rich for some people. I'm not gonna judge you for that, because I actually got it. I waited for it to go on sale to buy it because I knew about the performance issues and I didn't know how fixed they really were, and there's no demo or anything for me to check. So I waited to get it for about half price, but it is $30. The game is $30 on Steam right now. That is its standard price. Whee! And for some people looking for a game like this, that might be a little too much. It's not like a crazy detailed sim racer. It's not something like, you know, Project Cars or NCG. It's not something like BeamNG Drive, which has a huge like modding scene and a bunch of stuff like that. It's good for what it is. I'm definitely enjoying it. But does the amount of content on offer actually justify that kind of price tag? And I can't speak for everyone, but I have to admit that I'm happier that I got it on sale. Because, I don't know, $30 it's not super expensive. It's not like it's a full price, like AAA $60 game, but that's not cheap. Oh god, no. And I have to kind of stress to people that yes, the performance issues are definitely fixed. There are occasionally frame drops in really heavy pedestrian like blood splash moments where there are like huge numbers of pedestrians that you're mowing through and it like covers your screen with ped blood. But other than that, generally speaking, the performance is very solid. So that helps the price feel more manageable, more reasonable, because the game actually works like intended. And there are more updates to come with, oh god, I've never gotten the feeling fragile power up before. That's not good. It's more of a power down, isn't it? And like I said, yeah, there are more updates to come. There's more content that's going to be on the way, more cars, likely more power-ups, more courses. And who knows, it seems to be selling fairly well now that they've actually had it on sale a few times and they've been able to fix the glaring performance issues and large, like, game-breaking bugs and things of that nature. So, yes, they have fixed a lot of that, and hopefully that means that further support will be a little easier, because people are more trusting to actually buy the game now that they're seeing that it runs properly and it's fixed. And that means maybe expansion content or DLC or something, and lots of new stuff. But, judging, you gotta go by what's in the game right now. Is all this enough for you for $30? That's gonna be up to you. I'm happy with it, but I got it on sale, so. It's a really good combat racing, vehicular combat, silly, puerile Carmageddon game. It's a good Carmageddon game, there you go. That's what it is. It is good at being Carmageddon, and I think that's all it's really trying to be. So, this has been Carmageddon Reincarnation. If it looks interesting to you, and worth a shot, then I will link you in the description below, of course, to the game, and you can try it for yourself. There's one more caveat I forgot to mention. The keyboard and mouse controls are a little wonky. Because of the way the handling works and is very different, I really recommend a controller. That's not really surprising for a racing game on PC that you really want a controller, at least. But yeah, I would highly recommend that you use a gamepad for this. Other than that, I wouldn't say that it's a bad proposition. For $30, you decide. Maybe wait for it to go on sale for a little less, maybe 20, maybe 15, who knows. But it is a pretty solid game with a pretty significant amount of content now that has had most of its really glaring issues, especially the performance, genuinely fixed. And they obviously care and have been updating it quite frequently with new stuff and new cars and fixes, and it makes me think that it's got a good future ahead of it, hopefully. The devs definitely care, and they're listening. So there you go, Carmageddon Reincarnation. Buy it now on Steam for $30 if you want to. Wait for it, I don't care, do what you want. But enjoy it. If you are a Carmageddon fan of the classic kind of games, then you could do a hell of a lot worse than to give this a shot, because it's pretty enjoyable. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.